Right now, inside the Islamic Republic of Iran, something is happening that was never supposed to be possible. Not a prediction, not a rumor, an ultimatum. The most powerful military organization in the Middle East, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, is turning its guns inward. Not at the protesters filling the streets of Tehran, not at the American Navy lurking in the Persian Gulf, at the supreme leader himself, the IRGC, the Praetorian Guard of the regime, the men who controlled the nukes, the oil, the hard power, is now demanding that Mojtaba Khamenei leave. 24 hours, that is the window. And as you watch this, that clock is ticking. You have heard stories about Iranian cracks before. This is different. This is not a rift between politicians. This is a fracture in the spine of the system. Sources inside Iran report that the demand is circulating behind the closed doors of command bunkers. These are the hard men, the veterans. Today, it is being typed into encrypted chats, passed in paper memos, and debated in secure rooms where phones are stripped at the door. What turned the protectors into the threat? For 47 years, the regime sold one promise. We do not surrender. Resistance is our identity. And then it wasn't. It died with a tweet. April 17th, 2026. Iran's foreign minister posts that the Strait of Hormuz is fully reopened. The IRGC found out from social media. In that moment, the regime's narrative collapsed. The ideologues saw surrender. The IRGC saw betrayal. It is a surgical ultimatum. Leave the seat of power. Leave because you are weak. Leave because your leadership is a liability. The supreme leader has been unseen for weeks. In the vacuum, a 3-person IRGC committee has moved to seize operational control. The countdown has begun. To understand why this is not a bluff, you have to first erase the image of an army. Underneath, the IRGC is a conglomerate that operates ports, pharmaceutical factories, and oil terminals. It is the concrete of the house. But the IRGC's economic empire requires stability. The collapsing rial and empty ATMs are problems for the cash flow of the organization itself. When soldiers stop getting their side incomes, when construction projects freeze, when the smuggling routes are disrupted by open conflict, the commanders do not pray. They start calculating. The ultimatum did not come from nowhere. It came from a structure that has quietly, surgically replaced the civilian government. Most of the world still thinks Iran is run by its president, Masoud Pezeshkian, a moderate elected on promises of reform. Let me tell you what power looks like today. Pezeshkian cannot appoint his own cabinet without IRGC approval. The elected president of a nation of 90 million people was overruled by an unelected military officer in real time, in front of the international community. The real government now is a 3-person IRGC committee operating with no constitutional mandate, no clerical oversight, and no public accountability. First, Major General Mohammad Reza Vahedi, IRGC Supreme Commander, the heart center of gravity, a man shaped by the trenches of the Iran-Iraq War. He now functions as the country's de facto ruler. Second, Ali Akbar Zolgadar, Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council. He is not just a security official, he is the transmission belt between the IRGC's interests and state decisions. Third, Mohsen Rezai, founding commander of the IRGC. He led the organization for 16 years. He built the proxy networks. He is the man who whispers into the ear of a figurehead while holding the knife behind his back. None of these men were elected. None of them are clerics. They are the permanent state. They have decided that Iran cannot survive another decade with Mojtaba Khamenei at the top. To understand why, you must see the invisible split. The old guard, Vahedi, Rezai, they built the resistance axis with blood and diesel fuel. Their identity is martial success, not theological purity. Then there's the new guard, the ideologues around Mojtaba, men who rose through the seminaries and the intelligence bureaucracies. The old guard sees these men as dangerous liabilities who mismanaged the economy until the rial became confetti. If the supreme leader's inner circle is willing to bankrupt the nation, then the institution must protect itself. Even if that means removing the leader, the IRGC controls the ground forces around Tehran. It controls the intelligence apparatus, the counterintelligence cells, and the domestic surveillance networks. If the Committee of 3 decides to announce a transition, the message will reach 90 million people within minutes. There will be no debate. What pushed the IRGC from loyalty to ultimatum? It was April 17th, 2026, a Tuesday, a tweet. The Strait of Hormuz. The day the Islamic Republic admitted that the story it had told its people for 47 years was a lie. That is where we are going next. Imagine the map. The Persian Gulf narrows to a bottleneck. 21 miles wide, the Strait of Hormuz. Every day, 20 million barrels of oil pass through this waterway, 1/5 of the world's liquid petroleum, the global economy's jugular vein. And for 47 years, Iran held a blade to it. This was not a secret, it was doctrine. Every American aircraft carrier that passed through that strait knew one thing. In any real confrontation, Iran could close it. Mines, swarming fast attack boats. coastal missile batteries. The IRGC Navy was built for precisely this mission, not to win a naval war, to threaten global chaos. That was the deterrent. The crown jewel, the one card Iran could play when every other card had been sanctioned or burned. On April 17, 2026, Iran laid that card face up on the table and set it on fire. The tweet came from Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, clinical even. Full restoration of commercial vessel passage has been achieved. No announcement of a deal, no sanctions relief, just a quiet, bureaucratic sentence. The waterway was open, Iran was standing down. The strait was not lost in battle, it was simply handed back, unilaterally, for nothing. Inside the IRGC command centers, the reaction was confusion. Was there a secret deal? They waited, they made calls, and slowly, with cold horror, they realized there was nothing. The civilian government, the elected officials, had simply folded. Within hours, IRGC-linked media began the counteroffensive. The word traitor appeared in headlines. Hardline commentators asked whether the foreign minister had shown flexibility. The unspoken question hung, was this authorized by the supreme leader? Since that tweet, Abbas Araghchi has not been seen in public. Not once. No photograph. He is now a ghost, hiding. The old guard of the IRGC understood. Pushed by ideologues around Mojtaba, the civilian government had panicked facing economic collapse. Donald Trump responded to the reopening of the strait. He posted that Iran had agreed not to continue uranium enrichment. He framed the moment as proof that his maximum pressure campaign had broken the Islamic Republic. The regime had been played, publicly, on the world stage, by a single social media post. In the IRGC command bunkers, the old guard asked, is the supreme leader in control? Does he know what his ministers are doing? After his selection, Mojtaba Khamenei had no image, no voice. During the most critical crisis, the man at the apex of power was invisible. A vacuum opened at the top of the system, and nature abhors a vacuum. So does power. The IRGC committee, Vahedi, Zolgadar, Rezaieh, simply filled the space. Decisions that once required a signature began moving without it. The IRGC looked at Mojtaba and saw a man who could not defend the regime, a man whose circle had handed away their greatest weapon. And so the whispers began. First, in the secure rooms of the IRGC headquarters, then in the encrypted chats, then in the paper memos passed between commanders who trusted no electronic device because they had seen their colleagues hunted by Mossad targeting operations. The demand crystallized: resign, step aside, leave. Not because the revolution is dead, but because it must be saved from you. 24 hours. But this moment did not arrive in a vacuum. It was preceded by 3 wars that are burning through Iran right now. Wars that the supreme leader cannot stop because the supreme leader cannot be seen. And those wars are next. The war between the IRGC and the civilian government. The war between the clerics and the generals. And the war in the streets, where the regime's own base now chants for the return of the monarchy. The clock is still ticking, and we are about to enter hour 1. Pause the tape, freeze the frame. We are now entering the most dangerous 24 hours in the history of the Islamic Republic since the Iran-Iraq War. How does an ultimatum like this get delivered? It is not an email. It is not a phone call that can be intercepted. This is a message that, if leaked, means death. If exposed, means civil war. If misunderstood, the entire structure collapses. So imagine it. A room, underground. The walls thick enough to stop electronic surveillance. The participants stripped of every device. Just men. Hard men. Veterans with 40 years of blood on their hands. A 3-man committee. On the other side, perhaps a single representative of the supreme leader. Perhaps the message is delivered to an empty chair. The demand is simple. It is not a negotiation. It is a diagnosis. The Islamic Republic is burning through 3 wars simultaneously. The economy is weeks from total collapse. The Strait of Hormuz card has been thrown away. The Americans are mocking Iran. The IRGC is not asking for policy changes. It is asking for the supreme leader to understand that his continued presence is the liability. Resign. Vanish. Go to calm. Go to a compound. Go anywhere but the apex of power. Give us 24 hours to announce a transitional arrangement, or we will do it without you. The silence that follows this demand is the heaviest silence in Iran's modern history, because a regime that spent 47 years insisting it was a divine project must confront the reality that the men with the guns just gave an order. Does the regular army stand with the supreme leader, or does it stand aside? The army of the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Artesh. Since 1979, the Artesh has been systematically starved. Its budget is a fraction of the IRGC's. Its heavy armor is kept far from Tehran. The Artesh soldiers salute the supreme leader at parades, but make no mistake. They hate the men who control the real power. And now, in hour 6 of the ultimatum, the IRGC must ask itself a terrifying question. If we move against the supreme leader, will the Artesh move against us? In 2019, Artesh commanders privately made it known they would not fire on civilians. The IRGC had to bring in Basij militiamen. The IRGC cannot fight a two-front war. So in hour 6, the Committee of 3 is making calls. Urgent, encrypted, testing the temperature. If the Artesh stands aside, the supreme leader has no physical protection except his personal detail, an eviction notice. But hour 12 brings something the Committee of 3 did not fully account for. Not a military move, a psychological one, paranoia. In late March, something happened inside Iran that shattered the IRGC's sense of invulnerability. Targeted operations, commanders who believed themselves protected, figures inside the regime's internal security apparatus in Tehran, found, eliminated. In neighborhoods they considered safe houses, without warning. The methods were precise. The intelligence was surgical. The implication was clear. There is a leak, a deep one. Someone inside the IRGC's own communication network is feeding targeting data to Mossad, or to coalition agencies, and no one knows who. In the 12 hours since the ultimatum was delivered, the paranoia has intensified. Commanders are reducing communication. Encrypted chats are going silent. Internal security officers are asking questions about the loyalty of officers. The organization is now eating itself from the inside. The men who delivered it are now afraid that the supreme leader's remaining loyalists might have their own channel to the outside. The clock is not just ticking on Mojtaba Khamenei, it is ticking on the IRGC commanders who signed their names to this ultimatum. If they do not move before the leak is exploited, they are dead men walking. If they move too fast, the organization fractures. One IRGC officer described the atmosphere. The ground is moving under our feet, and we cannot see who is digging. Scenario 1, the capitulation. Mojtaba Khamenei signs a statement. It will not call it a resignation. It will call it a transition. The IRGC will announce an interim council. State television will show a signed letter, not a face. The Islamic Republic formally survives. Scenario 2, the refusal. Mojtaba Khamenei rejects the ultimatum. They order the Basij militia to mobilize, and Iran splits. Basij street cells clash with IRGC units. Some barracks declare for the supreme leader. The price is blood, and the weapons are distributed. Scenario 3, the compromise of silence. The supreme leader is neutralized. His compound is secured for his protection. The IRGC governs in his name, indefinitely. The clerics keep their titles, but they will never again make a decision that matters. As you listen to this, the hour is approaching. Can a revolution survive when the revolutionaries themselves no longer believe in the revolutionary? The first war is the one most people outside Iran have not noticed, the war between the IRGC and what remains of the civilian government. President Masoud Pezeshkian took office believing he could steer the ship. Within months, he discovered he was not the captain. The elected leader of a nation of 90 million cannot staff his own government without permission from unelected military commanders. Then came the March apology. Pezeshkian, attempting to reduce regional tensions, extended a diplomatic gesture to the Gulf states, an olive branch, a signal that Iran wanted de-escalation. Within hours, IRGC commanders publicly contradicted him, not privately, not through back channels, publicly, on state media. The president was overruled in front of the world, and he could do nothing. Because the men who overruled him control the soldiers, the streets, and the guns. This is not a political dispute. This is a coup in slow motion, and it has been unfolding for over a year. The elected government still exists on paper. It still has ministries, letterhead, official photographs, but it no longer governs. The three-man IRGC committee decides. The civilian officials implement or disappear. And the supreme leader? The man who is the ultimate arbiter, silent, invisible, absent? The civilian government is now a shell. Pezeshkian reportedly told IRGC commanders directly that if a ceasefire is not reached, the economy will collapse within 3 to 4 weeks. Not months, 3 to 4 weeks. He was speaking as a messenger, delivering a warning to the men who run the country. But there is a second war, and this one cuts to the soul of what the Islamic Republic was supposed to be. The mullahs built this state. The concept of velayat-e-faqih, rule by the supreme Islamic jurist, was their theological invention. The justification for everything, every execution, every suppression. The clerics provided the divine mandate, and in exchange, the military protected the clerics. That contract is now broken. The three-man IRGC committee contains no clerics. Vahedi, Zolgadar, Rezaei. None of them studied at Qom, none wear the turban. They claim the authority of the gun. The theocracy is becoming a military dictatorship. Not gradually, now, visibly, in real time. Former culture minister Ayatollah Mohammadi expressed what many clerics feel. Iran is losing the psychological war. The narrative of divine resistance is disintegrating. The clerics no longer have the power to defend it. They are watching a military junta form. They cannot stop it, because the military junta has the guns, and the clerics have only words. Then there is the third war, the the one on the streets. And this one is different from every protest cycle that came before. The people in the streets are not westernized elites. They are the regime's core supporters, families who sent sons to the front during the war. Power cuts in Tehran last 12 hours, fuel queues stretch for kilometers, food prices have risen 40%, inflation eating savings like acid, hospitals reporting medicine shortages, cancer treatments suspended, small businesses closing across the country. The resistance economy was just a slogan. In January 2026, something shifted. The protests were no longer about bread. The crowds began chanting for the return of the Shah, demanding the restoration of the monarchy. This is an existential threat. The founding myth of 1979 was built on the destruction of the Shah's monarchy. If 47 years later the base wants back what was overthrown, the revolution's legitimacy has inverted. The story has collapsed backward into itself. The regime responded as it always does. Security forces opened fire. Thousands were killed on January 8th and 9th. Mass arrests followed. And for those detained, the state issued a direct threat to their families. Attend the state-organized rally on February 11th, Revolution Day. Or watch your relative's sentence increase. The crowds that filled the streets waving flags that day were not entirely there by choice. Some were there to save someone they loved, and when footage of the crackdown spread internationally, the regime deployed its final tool. State-aligned media and hardline clerics declared that all street footage was AI-generated, every video fabricated, the reality witnessed by the world, a digital lie. When a regime cannot hide what it is doing, it declares reality itself to be fake. 3 wars, 1 regime, and a supreme leader missing. But here is what makes this moment matter beyond Iran's borders. Iran is not just a country, it is a hub, the center of an axis stretching from the Mediterranean to the Arabian Sea. Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, and Shia militias in Iraq. If the Islamic Republic collapses inward, the entire architecture of power in the Middle East shifts within a day. 21 miles. That is the width of the Strait of Hormuz at its narrowest point. And every day, 20 million barrels of oil pass through. Japan's lifeline, India's fuel tank, Europe's winter heating, and your gas station. The price you pay is partially set in that narrow water. What no scenario modeled was this: the strait staying open, but the country controlling it collapsing from the inside. The global energy market does not just fear disruption, it fears uncertainty. And uncertainty is pouring out of Tehran like smoke from a burning building. Hezbollah, the crown jewel, an army in Lebanon with thousands of rockets, all dependent on Iranian cash and IRGC logistics. If the IRGC is consumed by an internal struggle, the suitcases of dollars stop moving. The men in Tehran are too busy securing their survival. The Houthis in Yemen lose their strategic coordination. They become a local insurgency again. The maritime security calculus in the Red Sea shifts. Iraq watches this with more fear than any other capital. Baghdad has the most to lose when Iranian discipline cracks. The clock is still running. The entire axis of resistance, the network that reshaped the Middle East from the Mediterranean to the Gulf of Oman, is now leaderless. Not because the leader died heroically in battle, because the leader's own guardians told him to leave, and he is considering the offer. Now pull the camera back further, to Beijing, to Moscow, to the capitals that bet on Iranian staying power. China depends on Iranian oil, not just for energy, for leverage. Iran was a pressure point China could squeeze whenever it wanted to remind Washington. Every time an American negotiator sat across from a Chinese counterpart, the unspoken message was there. We can stabilize the Gulf, or let it destabilize. But if the Iranian state fragments, China's Iranian card loses its value. A fractured Iran, run by competing military factions, is a liability. Moscow is calculating something darker. Russia built a military relationship through drone technology and proxy strategies in Syria. If the IRGC removes the supreme leader, the new junta still has drones. But it has a legitimacy problem. No cleric, no divine mandate. Russia knows what happens when ideology collapses. It happened in Moscow in 1991. The Soviet Union fell when men stopped believing in the system. Is the Islamic Republic of Iran at its 1991 moment? The Soviet Union looked invincible from the outside. Then, very suddenly, it was gone. The Shah's military looked formidable, but when ordered to fire on the people, they lowered their weapons. The regime ended when belief died. Iran today sits on the same threshold, a supreme leader who cannot appear in public, a population that has lost electricity, savings, and hope. The most powerful weapon was not a missile. It was the gap between what the regime promised and what the people could see. Flags still wave, the television still broadcasts, but underneath the belief is gone. And when belief is gone, the structure is held by habit. The ultimatum is a symptom. The IRGC is stating the obvious. The supreme leader must go because staying takes the entire structure down. The clock is approaching zero. What happens will change every calculation in the Middle East, every assumption in Washington and Beijing. The Islamic Republic may not be an entity at all soon. That moment is almost here, and we will be watching.